So welcome in. Again, my name is Kelly Garbarino. I am actually a retired innkeeper and a senior marketing consultant here at Whitestone Marketing. If you're not familiar with Whitestone Marketing, we're one of the leading boutique marketing agencies for small lodging properties and wedding venues. And we're bringing you one of our sessions from Whitestone 101. Whitestone 101 is the foundational program offering group consulting, training, and strategy to all of our clients. So it's something that we offer on all of our plans, starting with pay-per-click. So today we're going to be talking about how to successfully reach the generations with meaningful target marketing. I think this is an incredibly interesting topic, no matter where we are in the current climate, because generations continue to age. They continue to start moving into different life stages. So we need to rethink about how we're positioning ourselves and who we're bringing into our properties. And then obviously it's always great to diversify yourself, in case the worst case scenario happens and there's a global pandemic and the generation that you had been depending on can no longer travel. So that's kind of where we are right now. And I know a lot of you are probably joining here today to learn a little bit more about how you can reach other potentially younger generations, because the older generations are less likely to travel. So we'll be talking about those, but of course, all the generations have their merit and have unique aspects to them for marketing. So we'll be covering everybody from Gen Z up to the baby boomer generation today. I would also add here that we're going to be exploring a lot of archetypes, which are just generalizations or stereotypes really about these generations. So please, no one be offended. Of course, we always have those outliers, but we're talking about huge groups of people. In the Gen Z, you're looking about 60 million people now. Millennials are up to 80 million. They're our biggest force right now. Gen Xers are about 70 million, and then our baby boomers are about 60 million people. So we kind of have to have these broad generalizations, but obviously you're going to know your guests best, keeping in mind that the goal here is to find new people and bring new people into your property that you're not converting right now. So keep an open mind as we go through this. So diving right in, I love this topic because it's very audience focused and it helps us look at what are our value propositions at our property and kind of positioning things in the most relevant way to create marketing messages that are really personalized to these demographics. So what this is called in the marketing world is the STP model. So the S stands for segmentation. So we're kind of dividing out, right, our customers into these different types of segments to kind of make some generalities. And then we want to target and kind of find what is the market that we want to go after, maybe what we're missing or what can we deliver best on that we kind of want to double down on, right? And then how do we position ourselves to win those people over, both in what we're offering in experiences, maybe we want to tweak that a little bit, and also the types of media and the types of platforms that we're then putting it out on to reach these people. So audience segmentation, obviously there's a lot of opportunities here these days with everything we know about people, good or bad, right? So demographics is kind of the classic one. So you're looking at things like age, location, gender. We've done that quite a bit. But as you move into social media and search engine targeting, they know so much about people. There's a lot that you can get into later on as far as, what has been their search behavior, what other types of pages or websites are they visiting, or do they like on social media, so we know their interests. And then of course you can really dive in and get into the psychographics of what are their personality and their interests as you start thinking about your particular guest psychographics there and archetypes. But we're going to start with age. That's a great one to start with, and an easy one to kind of start to segment people out with. So we're going to be looking, like I said, between Gen Z up to the baby boomers. And one of the important things to remember here is, yes, Gen Z can be very young, but they're important influencers as well, as far as the decisions that their parents or grandparents may be making. And especially if you're looking at getting into any of the multi-generational travel, which I think will be really interesting in the coming years with this pandemic. So many people have been apart. I think there's going to be a lot of interest in multi-generational travel as that gets behind us and we can have more free travel again. So appealing to those younger folks so they don't think you're lame until your parents or grandma and grandpa, they don't want to go there, is going to be important, right? All right. Now, the last part I'd want to say is, as far as figuring out who is coming to your site right now, who is converting, who are you doing well with, who are your missed opportunities, Google Analytics is absolutely your resource right now. So if you do not have Google Analytics set up, or you're not 100% that it's set up correctly, please reach out to one of the professional marketing agencies that work in our particular niche of the industry to get yourself set up, because this is just a gold mine here. You can see from this snapshot, they divide it pretty well along the generational lines, not exactly, but this is how they divide the age. So it can really tell you a lot. And you can dig in and say, okay, who's coming in on Google Organic versus Google Pay-Per-Click, or who's looking at Bing versus Google? I mean, it's a rabbit hole, but it's kind of fun. So make sure you have that set up, because that's going to be how you're going to track the results of your marketing. All right. So diving into it, let's get to know our different generations here a little bit. So starting off with Gen Z, this is our young generation. So born between 97 and 2015, pretty good span ranging from 5 years old to 23 years old. So like I said, obviously on that younger side, they're going to be more influencers on where their parents or grandparents are going to go. They're not obviously booking the travel themselves. But getting into that 20s, we are starting to see with our own clients a big uptick, especially, kind of in this post-pandemic area that we are right now. They are willing to travel more than any other generation, and they are doing so. So they are going to continue to age and become a more significant force over time. And of course, their habits are kind of trend setting and will start to trickle into our older generations as well. So it's really important to keep an eye on these guys. A couple interesting things about this generation, sadly, they're kind of known as the worried generation. They have a lot of weight on their shoulders. They came up in the time, post 9/11, they've seen recessions, they've seen incredible debt being saddled on millennials above them. They're, oftentimes their older siblings. So they tend to be more practical. They're not maybe as optimistic, and they see a lot of weight on their shoulders as far as kind of trying to save the world. So things like sustainability and social impact campaigns are going to be more important to them, because they're worried about the state of the planet, because this is what they're inheriting. They are very much digital natives. They've never known a world without, Facebook and things like that. Although Facebook is kind of old news for them, they actually enjoy Instagram and Snapchat the most. So for most properties, I would say, Snapchat is kind of based on the idea that your posts and things disappear over time. I would focus more on Instagram as far as trying to reach this generation as far as your social platforms go. And they are definitely multi-screen. We talk about that a bit. If millennials are 2-screen people, these kids are 5-screen people. They are very much digital natives, using all types of technology. And something really interesting is actually their favorite brand is YouTube. So that kind of tells you about how much they love video content and how important that's going to be for you guys to invest in the future. So there's our Gen Z, 5 to 23 years old, which is important, I feel like, when we come to the millennials, because I feel like millennials has kind of turned into this overarching term for just young people, but it is its own distinct generation. It was also known as Generation Y there for a little bit. So they are a pretty broad span. They're our biggest generation right now, 24 to 39 years old. And we've been talking about this a little bit, and I think it's very true that you actually even have a split within this generation. You have the younger folks that I think even blend in a little bit more with that Gen Z. They haven't really started families yet. They're kind of getting into their careers. And then you have the older millennials, right? And they're kind of staring down the barrel at 40. They've got kids, they've got responsibilities, but they also have well-paying jobs. So, in the last 7 to 5 years, that we've seen a really good uptick in that older segment of the generation. They've been a great source of revenue for our clients, but it's important to remember that their life is changing. They're moving into a new life phase. I would say anecdotally, myself being part of the older part of this demographic, it's raining babies right now with all my friends in my social circle. People are settling down, they're starting families. So that's going to change what they're looking for. That's going to change how much discretionary income they have. So that's going to be something we'll talk about and how we're going to position ourselves for millennials going forward. As you can see here, they're absolutely a mobile first generation, but they like using multiple devices. So that's something to think about when you're looking at your website and how you're going to be converting people. They're definitely still using multiple devices, and they still love video as well. Maybe not as much as our Gen Zs, but it's still incredibly important. Notably though, Facebook is still their social media platform of choice. We're definitely seeing a lot of inroads into Instagram, but not with the prevalence of Gen Z. Gen Z hardly knows that Facebook exists anymore. These guys still do a lot on Facebook. And again, anecdotally, I think that goes into that our older generations, right, the millennials, parents, grandparents, they're using Facebook. So if you're wanting to keep your family up to date on what's going on with the kids, Facebook is this nice kind of overarching platform for that kind of stuff. All right, so then let's move into Generation X. And sadly, often they're kind of this forgotten generation in a lot of ways, but they're a great market for us. They typically have older kids or even kids out of the house at this age. So they have a little bit more freedom than kind of our older millennials are right now, but they're still extremely tech savvy. Though we do see them typically more on the desktops or laptops than we see them on the phones, especially when it comes time to book. And you know, like I said, they are very tech savvy. Facebook is still their kind of area of choice. They're using it a lot to keep in touch with family members and to reconnect with old lost friends there, and using it as a communication platform. So this is a great generation for us to target right now. And they are absolutely traveling right now. They are somewhat cautious about COVID that we've seen, but are still typically in that area where they're a little more comfortable traveling than maybe our older baby boomer generation, which is going to be our least likely to travel right now. So we have our baby boomers. This generation is defined as the ones that still use voicemail. They still call, leave a voicemail, listen to their voicemails. So that's kind of unique compared to our younger guys that just want to do text only, right? So baby boomers are getting to this 56 to 74 years old. They are great because although they typically don't travel as frequently as our younger generations, they make up for it in the length of stay. So they're great for those more week-long stays, you know, long fall getaways, things like that. They have more flexibility there. They're a little bit more of an omni-channel approach because they are still very tech savvy. They have smartphones, they're on the desktop or laptops, but they also appreciate customer service more than anybody. They're also more loyal than any other generation as to a brand. So they're going to be more likely to call you up on the phone if they have questions. And again, Facebook reigns supreme here for them. They've been getting on it at an increasing rate, and I'm almost starting to dominate the platform as far as kind of the most active users here, and really enjoying it again as a way to connect with family, friends, etc. All right, so there's our generations. So let's now talk a little bit on how we want to personalize the experiences and position ourselves in a way that's going to speak to these different generations and their different life stages. So again, let's start off with Gen Z. They are this more practical generation. They would rather save than spend, and they're going to be looking for deals, but they are willing to splurge on those bucket list type experiences. So those kind of once in a lifetime things are fantastic for them. So again, even that bucket list term is going to resonate for them. So if you're bringing up marketing campaigns and content, think about using that kind of stuff in their verbiage. Again, unique and interactive go along with that. So they like that social aspect. That said, you know, a lot of their socialization is online, so it's going to be imperative that you have great Wi-Fi at your property. So if you do not, that is absolutely something you need to be investing in for this generation. They're saying even when they go off-grid camping anymore, there's like positioned around cell phone towers, because they'll go camping without any facilities, but they're not going to go without Wi-Fi. Like I talked about before, social impact is really important to these guys. You know, they have that weight on their shoulders. They need to kind of save the world. They've inherited a world in trouble. And they're very cognizant of the fact that their dollars can go to support businesses that support their values. And that's one of the biggest ways they can personally make an impact. So a couple examples of these from our own clients would be things where you have a portion of your reservation go towards kind of a local organization of your choice that does great work in your own community. So one of our clients does this with a local aquarium that does a lot of rescue and rehabilitation of animals. So people love to see something like that. And I mean, who doesn't love animals? That's always a very safe social impact type of campaign. Another great one, very unique to one of our clients, she actually has a rescue for dogs on her property. She has a large ranch, and we've incorporated that even further into our property by creating this amazing solo adventure package where they come out to our property, and there's kind of a glamping type experience, but they actually get one of the foster dogs to kind of be their buddy during the stay. And that's actually made it into the New York Times because it's so unique. And obviously that's a very unique aspect to her property. She has this large ranch, but just thinking of those things that you can do truly that make an impact in some way in your community or something you're personally passionate about, like dogs, and then incorporating that in the business, that's really going to resonate with this generation. And then finally, elopements has a lot of appeal. You know, like that older part of the generation, as we're getting into the mid-20s, are going to be looking at getting married, but they're still very practical. They're very aware of the debt that has been accumulated by some of the older generations with things like weddings, college education. So they're trying to look at better ways to do it. So elopements are a great option where they can still have the wedding, but it's a little more responsible, maybe financially. So if you are not doing anything with elopements or micro weddings, I would encourage you to add those to your repertoire to reach this younger generation. All right, so let's talk about our millennials a little bit. Like I said, a lot of them are aging into that area where they're becoming parents. And in addition to the adventure, you know, they don't want all skydiving and rock climbing anymore. They might need to relax a little bit, right? Because they're getting away from the kids. So it's important to have those varied adventures. Show that, you know, you can have that relaxing time, you know, whatever it is for your property, you know, beach walks, relaxing with a glass of wine in the Adirondack chair, or microbrews. They're big craft beer fans, as well as some of the more active things. Increasingly, they're going to be looking for more budget-friendly options because they've got the families. So that's something to look at as far as targeting them with maybe more off-season, midweek type deals, and also just kind of rethinking your property. Do you have the capacity to be family friendly? And if so, you should target those types of facilities within your property towards those millennial families. And then if you really aren't set up to be family friendly, not every property is, maybe you're better situated to be a special occasion property when you're getting away without the kids. That'll be something to talk about to them as well, you know, very specifically about kind of getting away without the kids. But you're typically going to see that be a shorter stay in that case. If you can't bring the kids along, you're probably not going to come for the week. You're probably going to come for, you know, that weekend or 3-day type getaway. All right, so our forgotten but amazing Gen X generation here, they have such a great interest profile for so many properties out there. They love things around local lifestyle. So thinking about, you know, what is, I know it's an overused term, but what is authentic, right, to your region and unique, and how can you incorporate that in an experience? Ideally, an upsell experience goes over very well with them, as long as they can see the value in it. They love touring historical sites. So I know many of our properties have some great historical sites either closely around them, or there's even historic elements to your own property that maybe you could bring out a little bit more to these guys. Educational experiences are also very popular with them, as well as arts and culture. The other thing to note here is this generation tends to be a little bit more focused on kind of policies. So if you have some very lenient policies right now when it comes to your cancellations, maybe you're doing free cancellation, 24-hour cancellation, something like that. If that's something that you can market in a positive way towards these folks, that will help you convert them during this time as well. Then finally, positioning for boomers. So one of the interesting things I saw here in our research is actually this group is the best for foodie tourism. And it's just interesting in that foodie tourism and the foodies in general seem to really rise in kind of national attention and for marketers with the millennials. But in fact, it's our boomers that are spending the most on food and dining. So that's something interesting as you think about how you're going to target folks. And in particular, they love wine. So if you have any local wineries, options to do private wine tastings on property, which are COVID friendly right now, that could be extremely popular. In addition, health and well-being beyond just COVID, but just maintaining that healthy lifestyle, kind of more of that exploration can be helpful. So, wellness retreats, yoga, healthy menus, looking at what you're serving for breakfast. Are you kind of supporting wellness there? Do you have options that that don't feel like a downgrade would be important to look at? Then VIP benefits. Boomers really love this idea. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something free, but it can also just be really showcasing if they haven't been a B&B guest before, but maybe they've been staying at hotels and now they're looking, right, for a safer, smaller alternative. Remind them about everything that your rate includes. Because if they've been staying at a hotel, they've been used to now paying for breakfast, paying for parking, $5 a bottle for the water, right? So make sure that you showcase all the value and sort of, right, those freebies, those perks, even if it's something you do for everybody towards this group, that's really going to resonate with them. And then, of course, during this current climate, COVID-19 safety is going to be really important for these folks. So showcasing everything you're doing to keep people safe. And if you have particular lodging options that, provide private entrances or completely separate cottages, things like that, that might be even more important to this group. Even if they're more expensive, we haven't seen as much price sensitivity during this sort of recovery period that we're in. And, baby boomers are our biggest spenders of any group. They have the most money to spend and the most freedom for the most part. So it's something to take advantage of in your marketing and also give them some good alternatives. All right. So now let's really get into targeting the marketing, looking at the type of media and the type of platforms that we want to be reaching these different demographics on. So let's look at some research from our good friends over at Expedia. Now, this is probably the one screen that explains largely why we're here today talking about the different demographics. It's because we need to reach into more demographics than maybe what has been our bread and butter before. So if you've been seeing a lot of Gen X and boomers, you might be hurting a little bit right now. You need to look at what can we get with the Gen Z and the millennials. So this is recent research. You see right here, less than 3 months, last time they booked travel, it's Gen Z and millennials. So maybe not that surprising from what you've seen in the headlines, but it's always nice to see it's not just a gut feeling. That's real research showing what they're booking in travel. All right, now let's look at smartphone usage. So again, maybe not that surprising. There's a few little tidbits in here, but Gen Z, millennials, those are the folks that are really looking at their smartphones when they're looking for inspiration for travel, when they're starting to get into the heavier research phase, which I did think was interesting is that when they're booking travel, the millennial generation is actually the most likely to actually book it on their smartphone, Gen Z is not too far behind, but they're actually leading in that. And then of course we have during the trip, everybody's using their smartphone to a high degree during the trip. So that can be some things, you know, obviously they're already at your property, but some other marketing things to think about is if they're on their phones and actively using them, how are there ways that we can reach them there to ensure we're getting those great reviews, which are marketing gold? So you might look at some of the texting options out there that can do those like mid-stay check-ins. How is your stay going? I have a few clients using them already, and let me tell you, it saves some reservations that could have been a negative experience, could have been this negative review that could have cost them untold dollars, right? But they were able to save the reservation. And it's usually, right, the most simple things. You know, it's the air conditioner is not working, it's too hot in my room, you know, whatever, something we could have easily fixed while they're on property. But for whatever reason, across the generations, they seemed reluctant to say that to our face. So I think that's something to take advantage of as far as the during my trip. And then of course, looking at the post-stay contact, starting to send maybe some of those review requests via text versus via email, because we just know that those text messages get read to a very, very high degree. All right, I digress a little bit there. Let's talk about desktop and laptop usage. So this is interesting here and goes into proving the fact that we are such multi-device users when you're looking at the younger generations. On this travel inspiration, travel research, you can see it doesn't dip down that much. So they're using both devices when they are researching. So when inspiration, and as you'd expect, you know, our older generations are using the desktops and the laptops to a higher degree, and obviously is not as much during their trip. They're not traveling as much with their desktops and laptops, although we are seeing workations or bleisure, whatever you'd like to call it, are kind of coming up in the interest where people are working a little bit from property. So that could change a little bit in the future. Now, here is where this sort of gets into the opportunity as far as the destination research. We see with the younger demographics, they typically are more likely to not have a destination in mind or still be choosing their destinations. We'll talk about what this means in your target marketing here in just a little bit. Versus those that are a little bit older, you know, typically have that destination in mind a little bit already. So they're going to be something where in your target marketing, it's going to be more about maybe proving or being in front of them as the best option in said destination versus trying to convince them that they need to come to your destination. Okay, so I'd be amiss if we didn't talk a little bit about your website. This is the heart of your marketing, and absolutely we see in the research that all our generations to some degree are using multiple devices. So you need to make sure that you have a modern web design that has a great consistent experience across all of devices. It needs to load quickly and provide your value proposition quickly and a seamless booking experience. So before you get into any of the other marketing channels that we're going to be talking about and investing in those, make sure that you are up to par in your website here. All right, so one of the exciting possibilities that is really can get into a lot more of sort of the elbow grease, doesn't necessarily cost you a lot of money if you're willing to do the work yourself, is the optimized content building. That said, working with a professional marketer can always be helpful in the sense of getting it optimized so people actually find it, but you can build a lot of this content yourself. So when we talk about content building, we're talking about being able to be found in organic searches. So this is such a great opportunity I see for those younger generations, because they might not know where they want to go yet, but they're thinking about maybe a bucket list kind of big special occasion type trip. In this example, Florida honeymoon packages, right? So they know they want to go maybe somewhere in Florida at least because it's driving destination and they're going for their honeymoon, but they haven't picked out any city Yet this is a great opportunity. So you can see, our client here, Port de Vere, has the #1 ranking for Florida honeymoon packages here. And we have this amazing page, and you could do it as a page or a blog post. It is very visual, has got great skimmable content here, really quickly getting to the heart of why they are the best place to have a honeymoon in Florida. So what we've been seeing for our clients that have had some good inroads with that younger demographic, that Gen Z to younger millennial during this post-COVID time, is they're coming through Google Organic. And they tend to be a very, very savvy user. And they're very much about authenticity. So they can spot, they see the ads, they want to see what is the organic, what is more authentic, the more true result for the best honeymoon packages, for example. So we're seeing coming through Google Organic. So for these type of things, I think this content building has a lot of opportunity for you guys. In addition, content isn't just this written content or the pages or the blogs on your website. Like we talked about earlier, Generation Z loves YouTube. Millennials also love video, and they're on social media a lot. And those generations are the most influenced by social media as well in their decision making. So think about how you can add video content for these specific niches, for these kind of specific trips that appeal to this younger generation more, and get it on YouTube. That's one of the second largest search engine out there. We know these demographic is there, so meet them there with some great video content as well that is optimized for search. All right, well, let's talk about paid search advertising. This is a huge opportunity across all the generations. And the exciting thing about paid search is they really know so much about them. So unlike organic search, where we're just kind of creating content we think will appeal to a certain generation, you can actually specifically tell these search engines to target people in these age demographics with specific ads because they know all of that information about them. So particularly on mobile, where we see a lot of people are doing a lot of research, they haven't really narrowed down where they're going to go exactly. These mobile ads are amazing. I mean, look how much real estate it takes up on the phone, and you can really deck them out with a lot of very specific aspects about your property and tailor it to that generation that you're trying to reach. So if it's that older generation, you might want to focus more on food and dining experience, COVID safety, private entrances, things like that. If I'm looking at my millennials, maybe I want to talk about, my specials, family-friendly lodging, things like that. The other thing to think about is platforms. We are very Google focused because that's where we see the most people, but it's not the only search engine out there. We also have Bing as another one that we work with a bit. And we see that the older generations, kind of baby boomers to upper generation X are using Bing, and they do convert well there. So it's worth testing advertising on Bing if you are not already. And the other thought there is to remember what you're advertising. So maybe you want to advertise honeymoons and elopements on Google, right? Because that's going to appeal generally to the younger demographics. But on Bing, you're going to be talking more about the stays, food and dining experiences, things like that, or maybe vow renewals, right? All right, then social media. This is, again, is another area for platforms that just has so much information about people that we can really target in on. It's mind-blowing how much they track about people, but absolutely they have those age profiles that you can target in and do paid promotions to specific folks. So for example, if you want to push those elopements, because you're going to do elopements, you can narrow in on that age demographic and show them ads, maybe ideally a video ad, right? Because we know they love video to that age. But in general, I think it is very important to remember that social media truly should be social. So we want to make sure that as well as, these great, beautiful marketing campaigns that we're putting in, any platform should also be peppered in with authentic photos from around the property, as well as maybe information from around the area. So Instagram is a great place that you're going to want to invest in if you're trying to get into that Gen Z and younger millennial demographic. It is incredibly important in the visuals that you maintain some diversity. The Gen Z in particular is going to be our most diverse generation ever. And obviously there's a lot of talk in kind of the public sphere about diversity. So make sure that you show that in your imagery as well. But I'd also encourage you to also show some diversity, not only in race, but in age. Right? Because if I only see pictures of 20-somethings in bikinis all day long at your property, I'm probably going to feel, if I'm almost 50-something, that maybe that's not the right property for me, or maybe it's a party destination I don't want to bring my kids. So try to make it authentic as possible to the folks that you actually have coming and staying with you. But Instagram, like I said, you can pepper in a little bit more maybe of your elopements or honeymooners, things like that, those types of experiences and trips that your younger demographic is going to be taking. On Facebook, that's kind of a bigger catch-all market, but again, I would encourage you to still have the diversity in your imagery, and also share some more information about your area here. The thing about Facebook that's lovely is it's really easy to share posts from other organizations like your CBBs or other businesses that you partner with in the area. So make sure to showcase all the things you have going on, because that's going to appeal to your millennials, right, that are looking for the varied adventures. And that's going to appeal to, your Gen X that are looking for the historical sites, the culture, and sharing things from your local restaurants for your baby boomers who love the dining. So there's a lot of demographics that you can reach on Facebook as well. And then this is just an example of a campaign that's done really well with some different variations for a couple of our clients. But again, that millennial generation loves it. Is, who do you want to be, the laid back lounger or the adventure seeker? Automatically, they see that there is just a variety of what they can experience in your area. So we've seen some great click-throughs on that, and some fun things that we've done with interactive type blogs, with quizzes, to kind of help them showcase how much there is to do in the area, and also help that end user kind of get an idea of what they might want to enjoy while they're there. All right, so we'll start opening it up for questions. The last thing I just wanted to say is email marketing is a huge channel we didn't talk about today, but that is typically because age profiling there is not as common. I don't know many properties that are tracking the age of their guests. I think that would be a little intrusive in a lot of ways. And then there are some options with platforms out there. We like to use MailChimp for our email marketing platform. On the higher tiered pricing, they'll do some predictive demographics. So they know some things based on some relationships they have with social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram about what age people fall into, but it's just not as accessible of targeting. And I think there's a lot more options if you're thinking about segmenting, to look at things as far as what are those people's interests, how many times have they come back, because typically your email list is going to be more of your repeat guests than true age demographic targeting. So just wanted to add that in there about email marketing, but it's still an amazing tool to keep in touch with past guests and gets great conversion rates, particularly Gen X and above. All right, so again, feel free if you have questions to drop them in here, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Any thoughts, Eric?
Bonnie, I don't see any questions in the chat bar, but we do encourage people, if they have questions, please enter them in the chat bar, and I know Bonnie would be happy to address them.
And
Kelly, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, you just no worries.
Okay.
Yeah, and if anybody has some thoughts on what they want to share of how the demographics at your own property have been changing, always interested to hear that. But like I said, we've seen some interesting things happening at the properties they work with, where they have been seeing that Gen Z starting to come in that they haven't seen much of before, because that's one of the groups that's most comfortable with traveling right now. Thank you, Christopher and Deanna. All right, well, I don't see any questions coming in. Do we need to close out the session?
Wait,
Yeah, absolutely.
a question just came up. What steps would you recommend to reignite tourism in COVID-19?
Well, a lot of it's going to be about comfort level, right? And knowing that they're going to be safe. So we've done a lot with our properties about being able to showcase that front and center, that foremost, they're going to be safe at the property. And then second, what we've been seeing people asking is just, is it still going to be fun, right? You don't want to spend all that money and do the traveling and put yourself out there if it's going to be this sterile experience, everything is closed, there's nothing to do. So I think there's an equal amount of marketing your area and what is there still available to do. Is it still going to be this great experience? And then working together, depending on where your property is. If you're not in a bigger city where you have or destination area where you have a CVB doing some of that work for you, you know, how can you band together with some of your local businesses, you know, restaurants, things like that you support, to kind of share and cross promote across your different audiences that your area is still open for business and excited to bring people in. So with that, you know, some of it's going to be free things you can do, but ultimately you may need to invest a little bit in some paid advertising, particularly if you're looking in that inspiration stage. If people aren't searching for you because they're not ready to come, might be looking at some paid promotions on social to try to reach people and inspire them to start searching. All right, I think I see one. You're welcome. All right.
Yep, I don't see any other questions.
Well, thank you everybody for joining me here today.